Today, first and foremost, I would want to define chords, or chords, or chord, however you call it. A chord is simply a combination of two or more unique notes. Just simply a combination of two or more unique notes. So, for example, we have one note. Now, a chord is a combination. So simply a combination of two or more unique notes. Now that is the educated people's definition. Now let me give you Basic T's definition. Now I would say chords, or a chord, is actually a number of friends that are individually amazing and lovely on their own, but never knew that coming together they could actually make up an amazing team, and furthermore make great impact by letting others play around their team. That's simply what we call a chord. Hello, great mind. Hope you're doing awesome today and having a lovely day. I'm glad to welcome you to our first class of BGM 6. And I'm really excited to have you. I know this is going to be the most amazing bass guitar mentorship program you have ever experienced or gone through in your life. Welcome once again. Today, I'll be going over fretboard mastery. Yes, fretboard mastery. Now, when we talk about mastery, we're basically saying, or we basically mean being a master over something. That means whenever you're called upon to do that particular thing, you will do it as though it's your lifestyle. That's basically mastery. That's the layman's way of defining mastery. You do it as though it's your lifestyle. You're so good at it, you've mastered the in and out of it. So when you mastered something, you gain mastery over it. So we're trying to gain mastery over our fretboard. And our fretboard is just from here to here. Basically, that's our fretboard. Down from here, up until here, up from here or down until here. That's our fretboard. And our fretboard is basically made of wood. And we have fret marks. Fret marks. These are fret marks. These lines you see right here are fret marks. These lines, they are fret marks. These straight lines, vertical lines are fret marks. So each of these, in between the lines, like from the very first, from the bridge here, down here is one fret, this is another fret, this is another fret, this is another, this is another. Count way down. Some guitars have 24 frets, some 22, and some 20. Most of the Fender bass guitars have 20 frets. But here is a Marcus Miller Sire M2, and we have 24 frets. So these are the frets. The lines are the fret marks. These lines, like I said earlier on, and we also have fret dots. There are some frets that have dots. There's one with 2 dots, others have single dots, another 2 dots. Some might not be the circular dots, some might be maybe a line, and when you get to some point, you see that the line is longer like that. I'll tell you the essence of all this on this lecture on frets, understanding the fretboard or fretboard mastery and dexterity. But first and foremost, before I go into that, I think I'll do well to first explain, or would I say teach you, for the sake of those who are quite new to the bass guitar probably, or you've gone far and you discovered that you need to come back to settle some scores that you probably didn't take note of earlier on when you were learning. So for that sake, I'll be going over the keys on the fretboard, but I'll be using the keyboard to explain this just like you have on your screen right now. We have basically on the major scale, we have 7 keys. 7 keys. Or would I say 7 notes? So on the C major scale, we have 7 notes. And I know if you know your solfa, you already know it's do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So that do is actually an octave. That's the octave of your first note, which is your root note. So on C major, we have do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. That's 7 notes. And your do is your 8th note, which is your octave. The octave, when you say octave, you can talk about the higher octave or the lower octave with reference to the octave or with reference to the notes you're playing on. So we have the lower octave and we have the higher octave. So basically, on the key of C, those notes will eventually be C, D, E, F, G. Is it H next? Don't mind me. Maybe in the next word we'll have key H. But we have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, then our octave C. I hope that's clear enough. Those are the notes on the C major scale. And just like I said, and you have on your screen again, there are actually what we call intervals between notes. There are intervals between notes. Some people call them spaces, but musically it's called interval. So on the major scale, our interval on the major scale is just like you have on your keyboard right now. We have C, D, E, F, G, A, B. So you can see that there are white notes on your screen on the keyboard, and there are also black notes. I will explain those black notes, but let me focus on the white notes with reference to the black notes first of all. So we have C. Between C and D, can you see a black note? Yes, there's a black note. So that means our interval is a whole step. Whole, I'll be representing as W. W. Whole. Between C and D, we have a whole step. On the keyboard, between D and E, is there a black note in between? Yes, there is a black note. We have another whole step. That's another W. Between E and F, is there any black note? No, there is no black note. So we have a half step. So that's H. Between F and G, do we have any black notes? Yes, we have a black note. So that's a whole step. Between G and A, do we have any black notes? Yes, there is a black note, so we have another whole step. Between A and B, is there a black note? Yes, there is a black note, so we have another whole step. Now, between B and C, is there a black note? No, there is no black note, so we have a half step. Now, bringing that to the bass guitar, I will show you the very first and the most important, the starting point, let me put it that way, because that's what we have as a starting point on our major scale from the key of C. So this is our position on key C. This is key C on the bass guitar, the second string from the top. The second string from the top. So let me just say the second string is our key C. So now, you recall just a while ago we talked about a half step between C and D. Sorry, a whole step between C and D. So on our bass guitar, this is the way it is represented. Between C Moving down this way, our next note would be D. So between C and D, instead of me playing this, that means if I'm trying to play D, it will be a whole step from C. So if I have C as this, a whole step from C will be this, D. Still moving horizontally, a whole step from D will be E, based on what we analyzed on the keyboard. From E is a half step, so we are not jumping any space in between, unlike the way we jumped a space in between C and D and E. So we just move to this. So what we have is a half step. From F to G, we had a whole step, just like we had on our keyboard, don't forget. So it will be this. From G to A, we had the whole step, so we're jumping one note again. So those are intervals representing it on the bass guitar. Between A and B, it was a whole step on the keyboard, so we're jumping one note. Then between B and C, our octave, there is no note in between, and there's no black note or black key like we have on the keyboard. So it's a half step between B and C. I hope that's clear enough. So that is basically running a major scale on the bass horizontally. But you know, if you were to play horizontally, you will get bored and fed up and tired of just moving around like someone who is confused. So there is actually another way to approach this. But before I show you how to approach this, I would love to show you the keys with respect to what I just showed you on the key of C. I'd love you to show you the keys on the open string. And just like I derived from C, we're going to move backward. I'll just show you one, then I'll tell you the fixed notes for others, but I will eventually tell you how to arrive at this or how to figure out where your keys are using this. So from C, if we're moving backward, just like we moved down here, we can also move backward. So if we are moving backward from C, the next note behind C or before C, moving out of the fretboard, the next note before C is B. And before B, the next note we have is A. And between B and A, or would I say between A and B, there is an interval. That means there's a whole step. There is a whole step. There is a W meaning whole, between A and B. So definitely, if this is B, this cannot be A. So that's how we arrived at our open string as A, because between A and B, there is a whole step. So this is our interval. This is, let's assume this is the black note. So if this is B, this is not A. That means our A will be our open string. Now, I just derived for A. But basically, I would show you the constant notes for a standard tuning of the bass guitar. And for the standard tuning of the bass guitar, 4 strings bass guitar, when you strike a note or a string, without placing your finger on any note, it's called an open string. It's open because you didn't lock it. When you lock it, it's closed. But it's open because I'm not striking anything. So on the open string, the first string is E. The second string is A, which we just derived a while ago. The third string is D. And the fourth string is G. I hope that's clear enough. So basically, we're saying something like, eat apple daily. Great. Eat apple daily greatly. Let me put it that way. So if you want to master the open strings, what we simply have is eat apple daily greatly. Eat apple daily greatly. So what we have is E, A, D, G. So now we move to the second segment. Yes, back here. So what we were talking about earlier on was the open strings. Now, from the open strings following the intervals I showed you earlier on, you'll see that it's very easy to now derive your keys on your fretboard. So, for example, this is E open string, the very first string on the bass, E. So we know already that between E, after E, the next note is F. And between E and F, we don't have any black notes. And don't forget your black notes is actually the space here. The space, we have white note, black note between C and D, white note, black note before D, D, white note, black note up before E. So now between E and F, we don't have any black notes. So if our open string is E, what would be our F? Definitely the very first closed string. Let me say closed string. The very first string you play holding down the first note on the fret. So if that is E and this is F, then definitely if I'm looking for G, G is definitely a whole step ahead. So this is G. So this is G. If I want to get G, if I want to get A from G, it's a whole step. So G, I jump one note and I move. That's my A. So practically speaking, it's very easy to find all your notes from the open string. That's one easy way to find your notes from the open string. It's not difficult. Simply understand and master intervals on your keyboard where we have the white notes and the black notes, and try to represent the black notes as the interval on your bass before moving to the next note, like from C to D, D to E, from F to G, G to A to B. Those are whole steps. But from E to F is a half step, and from B to C is a half step. So basically, that's one way to derive your notes on the fretboard. So that being said, I think the next thing I would introduce you to is how to play your major scale vertically. Like I said earlier on, you can't just start playing the major scale this way and you keep struggling, playing horizontally, when vertically, within the frame of just 4 fingers, 4 fret points, you can actually arrive at your major scale. Now, this is how to play it, but before I show you how to play it, I would love to introduce you to the finger per fret pattern of playing your notes. Now, there are so many professional musicians, if I may say, or people who play great, who really don't know the finger per fret position. So they suffer a great deal in expressing themselves on their bass guitar, either as a solo bass player or as a backup bass player. They suffer a great deal. I mean, some go as far as having injuries on their fingers, and sometimes their fingers get tired easily just because they have not mastered the finger per fret pattern. So this is basically what we have. Each finger covers 1 fret. So basically we're having 4 fingers on our fretboard. So what we have here is, we already know where our C is. Our C is the 3rd fret from our open string. So when we count 0 on our open string, on the 2nd, that's the 2nd string, 0, 1, 2, 3. These are C. So our our middle finger plays the first note. Don't forget we're using the finger per fret. So index finger stays on the 2nd fret, middle finger on the 3rd fret, ring finger on the 4th fret, and the pinky, which is the smallest finger, on the 5th fret. So basically, whatever finger lies on that fret holds down the notes you are playing on that string. So, like I said, this is C. Our whole step from C, if I'm trying to play the major scale from C, would be D. So if this is D, I'm playing, if this is D, playing with my pinky, D, and I want to play my E, I should not forget that the string under is actually D. So if the string directly underneath it is D, then if I want to play from D to E, the string under is D, don't forget, open string. So if I want to play from D to E, it's a whole step. So from my open string, I jump a half tone and I move a whole step. So that's our E. So running from here, you know, C, D, E. So now from E, you already know, to F is a half step. From F to G is a full step. I just sounded like a professor in my school when I was in the higher institution. So from, from F to G is a full step. Now, we're now moving to the smallest string, or would I say the tiniest string? And the tiniest string is G. So from G, if we're moving from G to A, like we're representing on the major scale, definitely if our open string is G, it will take a whole tone to move to A. And we know from G, our next note is A. So on that string, we have A. Now, I would love you to take note of the finger striking that note. So from G is a full step from G to A. So from A is a full step to B. And from B is a half step to C. I hope that's clear enough. So now, from here, you would already see, that we have an octave from C. We have an octave on the last string, that's from the second string to the last string, which is also the fourth string. If you draw a line diagonally this way, across two extra frets, that's your octave. So from this point, I hope that's clear enough. That's an octave. So if I'm playing this as the octave, I'm playing this, which is C major or C, and I'm playing the octave here, definitely for every other string or every other note that lies on the second string, the octave is also the same formation. So for every note that lies on the second string, the octave of that note, that's if you're playing a 4-strings bass guitar, let me be specific about that. The octave of that note is definitely on the 4th string, counting just 2 frets away from the note itself. So if I count this, I'll count 1, 2. So on this fret point, the note on the 4th string is the octave of my first note. I hope that's clear enough. So that's one way to master octaves on your fretboard. And now, if you're mastering octaves, bear it in mind that there is not only one way to master your octaves. So now, I can also find the octave of that note on the 3rd string. Don't forget we're playing on the 2nd string. I can find the octave of that note on the 3rd string. But just before that, you can also find the octave of your note on your 1st string. The same formation, but this time around, if you're playing the note on your 1st string, your octave would be on your 3rd string. Still the same formation. You play the note, you count 1, 2. Now, the 3rd string on the same fret point or fret position after where you counted 1, 2 is your octave. The same thing if you run it. So this is my key of F as F major. That's running the major scale on F. So that's another way. So there is also another way to find your octave on the string just below any string you play. That's if you have a string below, that means on the fourth string here, we don't have any string below. So we can't find the octave of that note, of that string, or the note on that string on the string below for a string that doesn't exist. So finding the note on the string just below the string you're striking your note on is very simple. You play your notes and you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The string directly under it, that same fret position, is your octave. I can repeat the same thing on the next string. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's another way to find the octave of the note on the string that is directly under the string where you struck that note. That's another way to find it. Now I'll be introducing you to another way that has been pre-designed by whoever came up with this design. Let me put it that way. Now, the person designed the fretboard in a way that you can function in octaves by merely looking. You don't really have to master anything. Probably the only way the only thing you need to master is master the speed of doing it. So the person made it very, very easy to identify your fretboard. And that's the use of fret dots on this bass, because some use marks, like you could use a straight line. So basically, your open string E, if I want to derive the octave of this without having to stress myself so much, even though the other patterns of deriving the octaves is really not difficult. But if I want to make the work easier for me, what I simply do is to look down. From my open string, I'll see the point where I have 2 dots. I know you can see 2 dots right here, 1, 2. If you cannot see directly on the fretboard itself, which is here, I'm sure you can see that. There are double dots here. If you can't see that, at the top of the bass, right here, if you can see clearly, you'll see that there are dots. There's 1 dot here. There's another dot here. But here we have double dots. At this top here, there are double dots. I hope that's clear enough for you to see. There are double dots. So merely looking, I don't have to be looking down at the fretboard like this, but from the top here, I can see that there are double dots here. And if I look way down again, there's another double dot at the edge here. I think I'll zoom that for you to see. There's another double dot. So basically, if I want to play my octave, from my open string where I have my first double dot is 1 octave. Now, from where I have my first double dot to where I have my second double dot, which is about the, let me say the last fret point, is another octave. So that's an octave. The same thing with the string directly under it. Same thing here. Same thing here. So I actually have 2 octaves already here. 2 octaves to play with on this bass. Well, for some guitars that don't have up to 24 frets, we might not have 2 octaves. It could be 1.5. Well, it really doesn't matter. The important thing is understanding your fretboard properly. So that's one big trick that I think is really worth knowing for every bass player. It makes your work easy when you understand the use of the fret dots. So the fret dots are not decoration. Some people think they're actually, it's actually a decoration on the bass. No, it's not a decoration. I'm sure you've seen some bass guitars that even have lights. They fix like LED lights on this where we have the fret dots. So that LED light makes it easy for them to play even when it's dark. Like, you know, you're in a concert and they have the lights turned off and only the lights on the stage and it's not so bright, you know. Sometimes they want to have some amazing lighting effects. So having the LED lights on the bass makes it easier for them to play. But notwithstanding, even if you don't have the LED lights, you have the dots and you have good eyes. So basically, that's how to identify your octaves using your fret dots. So I showed you the fingering position for your major scale playing from the key of C and playing vertically. I showed you how to play. Like I said, whatever note lies, let me just do a recap of it. Whatever note lies, or whatever finger, lies on that fret, that finger is responsible for holding down the note you are striking, or the note you intend to strike. So if I intend to strike C, that means my index finger will be a whole step back from my note if I want to play the major scale this way. So my middle finger plays my Do. My pinky, which is my smallest finger, plays my Re. My index finger plays my Mi. My middle finger plays my Fa. My pinky plays my Sol. My index finger plays my La. My ring finger plays my Ti. And my pinky plays my octave, Do. So we have the So that's how to play it vertically. So from here, using the major scale and the tonic solfas, you can actually derive all your keys, either using this or using your open string also. So I taught you how to play vertically just now, which was more like a recap of what I played earlier on the video. I will also teach you how to play horizontally, because it's an advantage. If you know how to play horizontally, it will be easy for you to recognize your keys also and their octaves. So the way you play horizontally, we have to do with a lot of stretching and stretching your fingers, let me put it that way, basically stretching them. And what we'll have on the major scale horizontally, your index finger plays your first note, C major scale, your ring finger plays the second, your pinky plays the third note, then you now have a repetition of that pattern from your F, which is your Fa, index, ring, pinky. They will now come to index and middle. So we have this. So going backward, we have from your middle finger, you play, index plays your T, then you now go back to the formation La, Sol, Fa, Mi, Re, Do. I hope that's clear. So if I'm playing if I'm playing horizontally, I already know this is my octave here. So if I learn to play horizontally, it will make it easier for me to identify where I have my last note. And if I want to play an octave on a very high pitch, it now becomes easy. So from here, it's easy for me to pick my octave because I've mastered playing horizontally. So we have this because I've repeatedly played over and over again on the horizontal position. So both on the horizontal and vertical, I think it's very important that we become masters of it, because the horizontal will help you a great deal in running notes or playing very high pitch or high octave or high pitches or high octaves. If there's any word like that, high pitches of the very notes we're trying to play. So for example, I'm grooving. So now, easily, I could pick the high notes from there, and it becomes easy for me to play strum. Very easy for me to now play around my notes. So if you want to find the deeper notes of the note you're from, just use the open string pattern. For example, I'm looking for G from C, which is my major. From C, sorry, not my major, just from C, I'm looking for G. I already know that my open string, just above that string where my C is, the open string is E. From E to F is a semitone, or a half step, let me put it that way. From F to G is a full step. So I already know that from C to G will simply be this. Relating with E from my open string on the key of my open string on my first string. So don't forget, string 1 is E, string 2 is A, string 3 is D, and string 4 is G. So from there you can actually derive this. Now, the big question is, now I know the positions, I know where the keys are and all of that, but how then do I now master it? Well, let me be sincere with you, it doesn't happen in a day. It has to do with constant and consistent practicing and playing. There are a couple of exercises I will show you that will help you master this. Positions I've taught you and how to get going on them. But just before that, I will also have to stress that if you really want to understand this, sometimes you just pick the bass guitar and you just look at your fretboard. The fretboard is very, very beautiful to behold. It's a beauty to behold. So you need to sit down sometimes and just look around your fretboard. Create an equation for yourself to solve. Okay, say, okay, today I want to look for every position of where C is from the first C position on the bass. So I could start and I will calculate. I keep looking, and I come, calculate. I just try to naturally find, without grooving or gigging, I try to find out where those notes are. Now, this can only be done when you are practicing, not when you're on stage. You can't be on stage and keep looking here and there where you're supposed to be playing. They'll knock you off stage, man. So I practically sit down and just study my fretboard to find out exactly where what I'm looking for lies. So I could pick for D, and I struggle and try around it, play around it, and look for where D is. So take time, study your fretboard, look at your fretboard. The human brain or the human mind is very photographic in nature. I can't count how many times I've practiced the bass guitar without having to pick the bass guitar physically speaking, or to physically hold the bass guitar. I've done practice several times without holding the bass guitar. So that's one. Another thing I think I failed to explain, which I would explain now, is like I said, when you have your open string, your first octave is here. Now, open string, let's assume the open string is another double dot. So that's a double dot. So between the open string and where we have the first dot on the guitar here, this is where our first fret dot is. So open string to first fret dot, that's on the 3rd fret of the bass guitar. How many tones is that? Or what's the interval? The interval is a whole step and a half. And what's a whole step and a half? A whole step means you're moving with one interval. Then half is from that one interval, you're moving just half step. So we have whole step and a half from our open string to where we have our first dot. So now, like I said, assume your open string is your first double dot on the bass, imaginarily. Assume it, yo. So assume that's your first double dot on the bass. So imaginarily we have this, and our first dot is a whole step and a half from there. So the same thing too, now we have our double dots here on the octave. So our next dot is a whole step and a half. You can see it right there. Our next dot after the double dot is a whole step and a half. Then from here, we have a whole step, we have one dot, a whole step, we have one dot, we have whole step, we have one dot. Then a whole step and a half, we have our double dot. So the same thing from here, you see, there's a repeated pattern. So after the open string, a whole step and a half is our first dot. Now let's assume this is our open string, which is the beginning of another octave. A whole step and a half is our first dot. Now, after this, our next dot is here. Same thing after this, our next dot is here. After this, our next dot is here. Same thing after this, our next dot is here. Here. Same thing after this, our next dot is here. Same thing after this, our next dot is here. Then we have our whole step, and we have this. So the markers have made it very easy to understand even where the markers are not. So if I play this, I'm actually playing a half step after my open string. Don't forget, we are assuming that the open string is our first double dot now. So I'm assuming I'm playing a half step after my open string. So now definitely if I want to play the octave of this vertically, it's definitely here because I have my double dot here. This is where my double dot is. Right here. So definitely, a half step is my octave. So sometimes you hear some rock, slow rock songs play this. So that's an example of how to identify using still the reference of the fret dots. So that's another thing I think I forgot to mention. So one more thing I need to mention is the fact that there are exercises, like I said earlier on, that would help you master these fret dots. And while playing these exercises, the first thing you should do is to get exactly the precision of those notes. Okay, what are these notes? I need to know what these notes are. So now we're breaking down the notes. Then the next thing you will do is you'll be controlling those notes using the finger per fret pattern or the right fingering pattern. Then you will now be speeding them up. That's where you use your metronome. Your metronome is very easy. Your metronome is very important. That should be your best timing friend as a musician. So here are the exercises. First of all, we're going to run the frets, we're going to run major scale vertically. Then from there, we're going to move to running it horizontally, string after string. Then we're going to move to running it horizontally, full length, full scale. Then our second octave will be full scale, but wherever it stops, move to the string just below it. So first and foremost, we run it vertically. The finger per fret position. Don't forget, this is not just an exercise to master the fretboard, but it's also an exercise for your fingers. Now, we took 2 stretches here. Now, we're going to take the third stretch now. I hope that's clear enough. So basically what we are doing is we are trying to master all the positions of every note. But now that we have got the positions, the next step, which I've already done, is to control them. So you need to really be careful about playing the right fingering also, because this will help you learn to play properly, how you should strike your notes. So I'm going to play very slowly, and you can probably start on a tempo of 50 beats per minute on your metronome. So it could be this. This might be more than 50. So that's one way to master the major scale. But don't forget that unconsciously, you're actually mastering where the other positions on the bass guitar is. Or are, if there's any word like that. So that's one. Another way to master this is by playing your modes. Now, your modes from your Ionian to your Dorian, to your Lydian, to your Mixolydian, to your Aeolian, to your Locrian, to your Phrygian, and all that. So, another way to master this is to play them in terms of modes. So, Ionian, we have this. So if I subconsciously or unconsciously, or let me say if I consciously, not subconsciously or unconsciously, if I consciously master to play these modes, with time my mind gets used to the positioning of these notes on my bass. It now becomes easy for me to tell that, okay, this is where my note is, this is where so note is, this is where this note is, this is where that note is. So I keep running up and down here and there. And with time, my mind gets used to it. So it's not something that would happen in a day. It takes consistent practice. You could be doing this every day so as to master this. I'll be sending you a chart, more like a diagram that will help you understand, even though at times when you see those charts, they become too bulky. And it looks like, this is confusing. Why do we have so many dots everywhere? And that's why I practically explained this video. But I think it's always better to send the charts as a follow-up and not as a starting point. So another way to master your fretboard is by playing the triads. But this time around, we're not just playing the triads in one octave. We're playing them on 2 octaves. And this time around, we are adding the second note on the major scale. So every second note as we move across the modes. So for the first note, note on the major scale, exercising in trying to decipher or master a fretboard, this is what I would play. The next one. The next one. The next one. Now, you understand that I'm actually moving. It's a sequence. So with that, when I play, it makes it easier for me to master the octaves. Now, I'm playing. Naturally, I feel I should stop here. But if I want to get to my octave, so now this now makes it easy for me to run stuff like this. So what I just did was, I just picked where I should have gone from here. I just picked. Now, the reason why this is easy is because I've mastered my octave pattern, or mastered the way of playing these notes in a sequence on the triad. So it now becomes easy for me to just pick. I could be here. It becomes very easy for me to pick exactly where those other notes on the octave or the octaves of other notes on the major scale is. So another one I would want to teach you finally is this. So to identify the same notes on a string directly above the string where we played that note, you just count 6. Simply count 6 from the string above. So when we have these are string above. This 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I could be playing. I'm playing the same note, but yet I'm moving. So people like wonder where is he moving to, why, or where is he moving to and why is he moving. I'm simply on the same note, even though the tension might be different because of the thickness of the string, but I'm simply on the same note. So I hope this class is good enough for you to call a welcome class, and I hope it's beneficial enough for you. So I'd love you to try out playing this. Try playing around your fretboard using every single thing I have taught you on this class. So your first assignment comes up today. I'd want you to run the major scale on the vertical pattern, the horizontal pattern, just like I played earlier on. I'll play it at the end of this video. I want you to run the major scale that way. And this time around, I would want you to play it on the tempo of 90 beats per minute. But you know, if you want to play it on 90 beats per minute, you have to start from a slow tempo first. Practice it. You have 7 days to submit this assignment. There probably will be a gift for whoever gets it right on 90 beats per minute. So I'll replay the video right now so you see what I played, then represent it, practice it, use the right fingering because that's part of what I'll judge, and send the video here on WhatsApp on this platform. So here's the video again. So it could be this. This might be more than 50.